Or the cloud. You
This one, I'll give to Peter.
So has this been tested? Does somebody have to adjust the volume?
Test, 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 test.
Maybe. Let me ask him to.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Oh, that's better. Maybe the
Let me have
volume.
him test.
Could people please take your seats, and if there are any left open, we're really great to see the turnout, and like to get started at 7 o'clock because we have a full schedule for tonight. My name is Tom Rindfleisch. I'm Thank you. I'm lucky enough to be part of Crescent Park, and I want to welcome you to this town hall meeting, and thank you for taking time to join us, including those who are in the streaming version of this. The goals of this renewed town hall idea are to build connections with our neighbors, to provide face-to-face dialogue with the city and neighborhood issues, and to learn about city updates. And tonight, we welcome residents from Duveneck St. Francis neighborhood, the Community Center neighborhood, Triple L neighborhood. I have to say, I had to look up why Triple L. It's because of Elsinore Drive, Elsinore Court, and El Cajon Way, which is where they are located, and then Crescent Park neighborhood. We're also pleased to have two council member co-hosts with us tonight, and JPL staff members who will be point people for the agenda topics. So to begin, let me introduce our cast of players. And first, a warm welcome to our council member co-host, Council Member Pat Burt. And freshman council member Julie Lithcott-Hames. And then also I'd like to acknowledge the neighborhood leaders who do great things in trying to organize what is a rather randomly organized group of people. Jeff Levinsky in the back there heads up the Duveneck St. Francis group. Peter Allen, right, Peter, heads up the Community Center. Dana Wong, that back there, is Triple L, and I'm associated with Crescent Park. Now, I'd like to invite, thank you. I'd like to invite one of our council member co-hosts, Julie, to give some comments about the town hall meeting and the reasons that that we're doing this.
Thank you, Tom. Hello, everybody. What a great turnout this is. I'm not sure we've had such a packed room at recent town halls, and it really speaks to who you are as a set of communities and how much you care about the city. And at the end of the day, the city is 68,000 humans from all different walks of life with all different priorities and cares, all trying to coexist peacefully, lovingly, cooperatively, with a lot of issues on our minds. And so we're really excited to have the opportunity to learn from you today, and for you to get to ask your questions and learn some things from city folk. And it's just a super important aspect of our local governance to gather together like this. And so we're glad you're here. Thank you for making tonight a priority given whatever else is going on in your life. I have to say, Tom, thank you for kicking this off and leading this, and thanks to all the co-hosts. I'm glad you asked about Triple L, because when I've seen Triple L, I assumed it was like somebody moved here from Texas and kind of named a neighborhood in kind of Texas fashion, you know, the ranches. Triple L felt like. So anyway, thank you for clearing that up. what I want to do is give you a brief sense of how I, as a relative newcomer, and Pat just said to me, how long are you going to keep playing that up? I'm not a freshman. I'm actually a sophomore in city council now. This is my second year, but I am such a newbie compared to Councilmember Burt, who has been our mayor 3 times, who is, I believe, in his 12th year of city council, 13th. Am I close? Okay. He's served a long time and I'm this newbie, and we need that. We need the folks who have not just terrific minds like Pat, but institutional memory on the way we were, the way we did it, why we did it that way then. It's hard to make decisions about the future without understanding the decisions of the past. And so it's been wonderful for me as a newcomer on council to get to listen to and learn from this guy and others. But I just want to give you a sense of how one of your newer council members likes to think about things as I try to do the work of the city. One way I like to frame things is, I've already alluded to it, the past versus the future. I want to be respectful of the past, really aware of the present, and loyal to the future. I try to behave in ways that imagine how will the people of the future feel we did our job, in 2040, in 2060. Are they going to curse us, the folks who live now, because we did X, Y, and Z? Or are they going to thank us because somehow we managed to solve tough problems with vision? And I think Councilmember Burt would be the first to say, it's not that simple, kid. You're never going to please all the people, right? And so that is an aspect of the work of 68,000. You can't possibly please everybody, but we ought to be listening to everybody, doing the best we can to make the right decisions in furtherance of what's overall best for the city. So that's one of my frames: respectful of the past, loyal to the future. Another one of my frames is, how do we move from I to we? We all have our own individual perspectives, needs, priorities, fears, dreams. And if we sat down in this room and everyone talked about that, we'd have a beautiful map of differences. We're all individuals and our individuality matters, and yet we've formed a community called Palo Alto, and we got to do some things together. And so moving us from what do I need to what do we need is another way, I think, to frame the analysis of a particular question. And then I always bring a lens of equity, trying to think about who's not here, who's not in this room and why, whose position, whose perspective are we not getting? There are so many ways in which we are different from one another, whether it's north, south, in terms of the town, or east, west, whether it's age, whether it's race or ethnicity or gender or sexual orientation, whether it's the work that we do, our income, our degree of education. There are so many, our politics, there are so many ways in which we are different. And I believe that we are stronger as a community when we're trying to bring, as many different perspectives as possible to the task of figuring out what to do. So some of the big issues on our minds as Palo Altans right now, not with respect to your neighborhoods in particular, but citywide, bike lanes on El Camino, should we have them or should we not? I'm going to bring that lens of respectful of the past, loyal to the future when I analyze the situation. I'm going to bring that perspective of what do I want versus what do we need. I'm going to bring that equity lens. I'm going to bring that same set of approaches to grade separation. How are we going to separate the train from the road finally, What are we going to do with Coverly? Where are we going to build that new housing? Are we going to get that intermodal, multimodal center at University Avenue, which Councilmember Burt has really, taught me is the second most trafficked train station on the Caltrain line, second only to 4th and Townsend. It's us. It's University Avenue. We don't get no respect, as Pat says. I'm stealing one of his lines. Pat, I'm literally telling a joke you tell right now, the Rodney Dangerfield joke. Right? Pat is there as a champion around transportation, right? Trying to make sure that our University Avenue gets the respect it deserves. And we ultimately have a transit center, second most traveled line on the Caltrain, biggest collection of buses in Santa Clara County comes right through there. So what are we going to do to really bring that to the next level? All right, the last thing that are you standing up because I'm taking too much time? I'm sorry. Did you turn to him and say Julie talks too long? I'm sure. Okay. The last thing I want to say is, as a newbie, relatively speaking, I try to bring a listening ear, curiosity, humility, with an intent to learn and grow. That is how I want to be in this role. And the final thing I try to bring as often as possible is gratitude. Gratitude for the opportunity to serve and gratitude for the people who are teaching me. When I ran for city council, I think Pat wasn't so sure that I was someone he could work with, and I wasn't so sure Pat was someone I could work with. And Pat has become my greatest teacher on city council and a true mentor. And I want you to know that because I think it's good for the city to know that. That's an example of coming together across perceived differences and willing to take your expectations and set them to the side in furtherance of what might be best for Palo Alto. So that's the spirit that I bring, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julie.
Can we take just a minute break? Because there's some chairs up here that are empty and there's folks that can move up. And also I can pull more chairs, but they're behind here.
Okay. I wanted to point out there are a few empty chairs up here for the people who are standing. Yeah. Okay. I'd like to move on to the main part of the meeting now. Our agenda tonight will focus on 3 topics, each of which has a city update followed by a question and answer. And the 3 topics are San Francisco Creek flood control on Reach 2, crime and security, which is a concern for many people, and traffic and safety. At the end, we'll have a less structured community Q&A for the time that's left. We think about a half an hour, and that can be any topic that you care about. I do want to address a couple of issues, housekeeping issues, about how we want to run the meeting. We should focus questions and comments on relevant local issues. We should participate with civil, courteous, constructive, and solution-oriented comments. Respect diverse viewpoints, listen and support those who are speaking. Keep your questions and comments short, 2 to 3 minutes, so everybody gets a chance to speak. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded, so there will be a YouTube version available in the archives. But that means that you, when you ask your question, need to speak into a microphone. And there will be a couple of people walking around with microphones, and we'll try to distribute the opportunities as carefully as we can. Finally, if we can't maintain the rules of decorum that I just talked about, the community leaders and city representatives reserve the right to recess and adjourn the town hall. I hate to have this option made available, but there have been instances where that has become necessary. So with that, I would like to move on to the first topic, creek flooding project status update. And Brad Eggleston, the Director of Public Works, was going to attend, but had a last-minute emergency. And so Mike Wong, is filling in for him. He's the Assistant Director of Public Works. And Margaret Bruce, who is the Executive Director of the San Francisco Creek Joint Powers Authority, is here as well to answer questions. The reason, because of the organization of this really complicated project, is it involves 5 agencies: Santa Clara County, San Mateo County, Menlo Park, Palo Alto, East Palo Alto. And all of these people have to get together and agree on something, plus dealing with the state and federal agencies. So this is a really complicated project. So let me turn it over to Mike, and we would appreciate hearing about the current state of things in Palo Alto.
Thank you, Tom. I'm going to need all your help. When you see Tom get out of his chair, warn me. That means I'm running out of time. Okay. Unfortunately, Brad couldn't be with us tonight, but he fortunately was able to pass on the information that he wanted to share with you tonight. The information that I'm presenting tonight focuses on providing a creek flooding update in the part of town mainly affected by the New Year's Eve 2022 flood. For Public Works, responding to the flood and additional storms has been a major focus of the past year, both in terms of preparation for this last winter and making progress on Palo Alto's portion of the Reach 2 project, the Newell Road Bridge project. The Public Works Department oversees much of the city winter preparation as well as projects to protect against flooding. Some of the project highlights for 2023 are that we installed a new video camera at the Pope Chaucer Bridge to allow you to actively see what's going on at the bridge from the city's Creek Monitor webpage. How many people have seen that? Good, right? Yeah. We also staged an excavator at Pope Chaucer Bridge to be ready to remove debris in case of high creek flow. We cleaned all catch basins and storm drains lines in the areas affected by the New Year's Eve flood. We installed a new catch basin down the street at Allister and Dana to improve drainage. We replaced old manhole covers and added new flap gates to protect Newell Place and Louisa Court Lane from flooding, which were some of the worst impacted areas of the New Year's Eve flood. We've created preparedness messaging and open house event. Fortunately, we were lucky this season that despite some fairly significant storms, there were no high creek flow events. One major difference between the 1998 and 2022 flood events is that the San Francisco Creek pump station didn't exist in 1998. That meant that all the water that had overflowed the creek had to wait to drain by gravity into the creek once water levels fell again. After the 2022 flood event, Public Works hired our storm drain master plan consultants to do an evaluation of our storm drain system and how it handled the New Year's Eve 2022 flood. The evaluation showed that once the creek overflowed, the storm drain pipes were overwhelmed, but the pump station never reached its pumping capacity. Palo Alto voters passed a storm drain ballot measure in 2017 that provides funding for maintenance and for 13 high priority projects. As part of the budget this year, staff is moving up 2 projects, Hamilton and Center, that actually increases capacity and would more quickly remove water in the event of a creek overflow. Our storm drain engineering team is also working on projects that are part of the 13 addresses where minor flooding occurred on East and West Bay Shore roads near San Antonio, but will also begin design on the Hamilton and Center projects. Everything I just talked about has to do with how to be prepared for an overflow from the creek if it happens. The other side of that is that it's important to make changes that reduce the chances of creek overflowing in the first place. We are working closely with Margaret and the JPA on the Reach 2 flood control project, and the part likely to go first is the Newell Road Bridge replacement project that is managed by the city. The new road bridge project does not currently create a flooding risk. The bridge itself does not create a flooding risk, but upstream issues like at the Pope Chaucer Bridge can't be addressed until the new road bridge is replaced. There are 4 parallel tracks that need to be completed for construction to begin on Newell: project design, right-of-way, permitting, and funding. The good news is that the project design is already complete. For the right-of-way, we need 8 easements from 3 property owners. 1 property owner just signed the agreements last week. The second one has indicated that they are ready to sign this week, and we are working with the 3rd property owner who is expected to be ready to sign soon. The permit application for the project have been formally submitted, and the regulatory agencies have indicated that we will be able to issue permits to meet our schedule. With respect to project funding, we have very good news recently that Caltrans moved the already approved $8.8 million in funding from FY 2026 to the current fiscal year. This is in addition to the $2 million state budget earmark submitted by Senator Becker that has already been received by the city. We did receive some comments from Caltrans on our request for an additional $2 million still needed and are responding to those. We also met recently with our state legislators about the importance of getting the rest of the funding approved. Once we have all the right-of-way agreements finalized, we can submit the right-of-way package to Caltrans. When Caltrans approves the right-of-way package and the regulatory permits are approved, we can receive an E76 from Caltrans to go out to bid for the project. At this point, assuming we stay on track, we are targeting award of a contract after council's summer break in August. Nice present, right? And there could potentially be some initial work in the creek this summer season. At this point, to stay on schedule, I'd like to turn it over to Margaret for updating you on the JPA Reach 2 update.
I don't have any prepared remarks, so I'm going to wing it. So picking up from where Mike left off, as you know, the Reach 2 project is an assemblage of lots of small pieces. Some of them can be lumped together. Some of them might be split apart to make sure that we can take action as promptly as promptly as we can. What we're looking at this summer is preparing for creek work, perhaps the channel widening work, the furthest downstream widening sites at sites 4 and 3. We number them starting at the downstream end and working our way to smaller numbers upstream. 4 and 3 are downstream of the Newell Bridge. We're looking at probably doing entry access preparation so in this summer, in 2024 summer, so that construction can happen in 2025 for those 2 sites. We have funding from the Department of Water Resources. We have a Prop 1 grant that will support that activity, as well as funding from Valley Water's Measure S resources. So that piece will probably be the first part that happens, and we're aiming at summer of 2025. In addition to that, we might be able to also do the replacement of the wooden top of bank temporary flood wall in the same summer. So working again from downstream to upstream, that might be the next spot. We're working with the Army Corps of Engineers for the next channel widening segment. We're working with them through something called the Continuing Authorities Program. There is a ceiling on how much they can spend in that particular kind of program. Their contribution is limited to $10 million. And you'd think, oh my gosh, well, you could throw a heck of a party for $10 million. Funny thing, it doesn't go as far as it used to. So that's why we're splitting out the 2 different widening projects, 2 downstream of Newell, 2 upstream of University, to help the Army Corps keep within their $10 million limit. Their process, however, is a little slower. So they may not be able to get to those 2 important sites until 2017. However, 2027, sorry, brain fart, long day. No, not 2117. I don't want to wait around that long. I'm pretty sure you don't either. Yeah, by that time we'll be able to teleport the water somewhere, and I don't know. So there's some time in between there. And you probably recall we had this interesting storm that created flooding, and we've learned something since then about the channel capacity. What we've learned is some of the things that we have planned, this channel widening, this replacement of the temporary wooden flood wall, do not transfer risk. We can do that without creating other problems. So we'll be moving ahead. We are embarking on a consulting project. We have a request for proposal on the street. We will be considering proposals. We will be bringing a proposal for a contract for a master services agreement to our board in April. And that consultant will help us look through all of the possible alternatives that pass the straight face test, that are actually implementable, and as some of my colleagues say, O&M-able, which is operations and maintenance-able. So, just because you buy a car doesn't mean you can afford the insurance. So we're going to make sure that we have a plan for augmented flood control projects, whether that's some more, widening sites or a different approach for diversion. We don't know yet. I can't even speculate. There's lots of things that are on the table.
We'll winnow them out quickly to what's constructible, affordable, effective, maintainable. And then those will be added to a supplemental environmental impact report, which we already have. This is like thinking how to describe this. This is all in series, not in parallel. I'm sorry, all in parallel, not in series. So while we are doing this construction, we'll be doing this supplemental EIR to tell us which additional pieces we can put in. We're aiming for 2026 for those additional pieces. Knock wood, funding is contingent, and we'll be figuring this out. One of the things that we are looking at closely is, of course, advocating with our state and local elected officials. Oddly enough, for things like sea level rise, climate change adaptation, there are lots of grants out there. I joke about it being the pretty girl in the red dress at the dance. Everybody wants to talk sea level rise and adaptation, which is cool. It's important. But urban flooding is this, oh yeah, we do that. Okay, whatever. We don't get very many grant opportunities for this chronic, critical issue. So for those of you who like to write to your state legislators, that may be something that you can comment on in your future legislation and budget endeavors. You might think about this important feature of our urban landscape all over the state, and in particular here. So that's what we're working on. Schedule is hypothetically, as my seatmate here says, poop happens. Barring that, that's our plan. 2024, some site prep. 2025, channel widening. 2026, augmented whatever. 2027, the last part of the last channel widening work. Big question, you might say, is, so what's happening with the Pope Chaucer Bridge? Did everybody pick up the FAQs that I had printed out and put on the back seat? A few people have. Okay, so there's some helpful information there. If any of you are gluttons for hydrologic punishment, it's actually not punishment, it's a really cool report. On our website and referenced in those FAQs is our third-party independent review that validated and verified Valley Water's reevaluation of the hydraulic model. The consultant's name is Schaffen Wheeler. They did a very good report. There is a short executive summary at the beginning of that document. If you have the time and energy, go through and read it. If you understand it, great. If you don't understand it, email me. I'm happy to go through it. The breakdown is the channel has about 25% less capacity than we thought it did before the flood. The reasons for the difference in capacity are that we just didn't have enough data points before. We hadn't surveyed enough data points. We didn't have enough flow data over enough examples of flooding to give us a clear picture. We have a clearer picture now. We understand that the slight variations in the top of bank on either side make a big difference about where the water spills. And we learned not only does Pope Chaucer Bridge cause problems because it's a choke point and water backs up behind it and then spills out, it's protective of Palo Alto, Menlo Park, and East Palo Alto downstream because it retards some of the water and retains some of the water. So on the basis of it is illegal for us to transfer risk, we cannot pursue just taking out the bridge. We have to think very carefully about what is the best solution to remove the problem or mitigate the problem upstream of the water backing up and spilling, while not adding to the woes of the people in Palo Alto, Menlo Park, and East Palo Alto if we were to take it out and send all that water down their way. So we're still looking at that. It may be a while before we have an answer, but again, that's why our consultant is going to soon be on board to help us figure out what is the optimal mix of solutions to address that. We don't know yet. Watch this space.
Thank you, Margaret. For those of us who have spent a fair amount of time being critical of the San Francisco Creek project, I want to point out that there is a major point of progress that was made several years ago, and that is the work that Caltrans did in adding a bore under Highway 101 when they redid that creek underpass. The second is that the reach from Highway 101 to the bay was upgraded to handle a 100-year flood capacity plus something like 2 feet of sea level rise at king tide level. So it is a very robust part of the project. Now what we have to do is the same sort of fix to reach 2 and to the Searsville or upstream detention so that we can move on. So I'd like to open this now to questions and comments from the audience. We've got 2 microphones that we're going to move around here.
I'm going back there first. You're next. Sorry.
Is there you took one that. I'm gonna need that.
Good evening. I'm Dhruv Khan. I live here across the street on Alistair and got flooded in 1998. Got a law degree here from Stanford, 1986. Currently the Farm Bureau president for the county of Santa Clara. I own a farm 40 miles south of here. And last year I learned a lot about farming. There was a lot of rain up and down California. And the upstream farmers in Central Valley, you know what they did to protect their downstream folks? They willfully assisted in the flooding of their own farmlands, assisted in percolation, assisted in replenishing their groundwater, and gave them another layer of topsoil. So I beg you to take a look at, and I would request a written response to the following suggestion. Stanford is not a farm. I researched it. It's a farm because it's a horse farm. It's an equestrian, not a real farm. But if you go upstream from San Francisco Creek, you run into the polo grounds and a golf course that I've played many, many times. So when the creek decides to flood, this used to be farmland. When the creek decides to flood and the water decides to fall the way it does, it's beyond our control. We really have to think about, and I understand about the business about not, risk sharing. Right now, the policy to protect the downstream is based on flooding upstream. Rest my case, Exhibit A, Pope Chaucer Bridge. So we have to do something that's fair for Stanford. And it wouldn't be that onerous for Stanford to close this golf course for 1 week, because you have to plan for the flooding. It will happen. And Searsville, blah, blah, blah. Everything you guys are doing makes sense to me. But what's missing is an affirmative plan. So you pay them, eminent domain, the right to flood their golf course, the right and pay them for that. It's a risk. But it's going to happen for what, 3 or 4 hours? We really have to think about this differently. And I'm really incensed by how this has been handled by our respective government agencies. And they've all heard from me in the past, and they will continue to hear from me in the future. But I beg you, have an open mind about it. I think this focus on the channel is misguided. To modify a channel which is populated has the challenges that I have.
I think we understand the point that you're making. Let me say that the fix to the creek is broken into a number of reaches. The reach from Highway 101 to the bay was the first one to be fixed. Reach 2 is from Pope Chaucer or Middlefield down to Highway 101. And then the upstream reach involves Stanford. And I would encourage all of you to look at a website, which is the Restoration of the Searsville Watershed. And the work that has gone into that, I was on a review committee for 5 years, looking at the possibility of using the Searsville Dam, reconstructing the storage capacity that it has, and use a hole in the base of the dam effectively to do what Pope Chaucer does right now, that is hold back large flows of water, so that coupled with increasing the conveyance downstream can put together an overall reasonable fix to the creek. It's in sections and it has to be done in sections. The project up at Stanford is likely to be $100 million worth of work. And the problem of permitting that and getting it funded and done is another part of this puzzle. So this is a complicated problem. Part of it is because we want to keep the creek as a natural creek. And one of the things that I think we need to do, because we've had a case where in the New Year's Eve 2022 flood, we found that the creek had less than 25% less the capacity that we had measured actually 10 years earlier. And that means that the creek is filling with vegetation and debris and sediment and other things that are inhibiting the flow. And there are strong restrictions on being able to clean out the creek because of habitat for ecological reasons. And what we need is a balance, in my opinion, let us maintain the creek at a reasonable conveyance, clean out the debris and the vegetation that has overgrown it, and keep that at a constant level so that we're not continually fighting a creek that has a diminished conveyance capacity. Other questions or comment? Yes. Microphone. Oh.
You're asking. I have a question. So my name is Evan, economist. I live on DeSoto. I live on DeSoto
You
Drive.
may have to have the microphone pretty perpendicular to your mouth.
Is it on or not? Okay. So I was flooded in 1998, and I'm very concerned about another flood coming. Last year, I read in the weekly that the Newell Bridge would be replaced this year. So I'm a little disappointed that it's been postponed to 2025. And you never did give us an estimate of when you expected the Pope Chaucer Street Bridge to be replaced. You must have some idea. I'd like to know what it is. That's my question.
I can't speak on behalf of the city of Palo Alto for the Newell Bridge as it's their project. But for the Pope Chaucer Bridge replacement, we're going to need to do, I think, 3 important things. We're going to need to figure out how we can replace it without transferring risk. We're going to need to figure out how to pay for it. And we're going to need to figure out in which sequence of operations it needs to come. That's the easiest question. So figuring out how to remove it or how to change it or how to replace it that does not add to the flood risk for Palo Alto, Menlo Park, and East Palo Alto downstream is going to be the hardest thing. The soonest it could happen is probably 2027. Just because moving from downstream to upstream, the widening sites have to happen first. Otherwise, we just make a mess downstream.
Thank you. My name is Susan Saul. I live in Crescent Park on Forest Avenue. I'm grateful to live in Crescent Park on Forest Avenue. I'm new to this. TC, you are like Bono level to me, because when you say that we should worry, I start worrying. Other than that, this is so confusing to someone who doesn't spend a tremendous amount of time learning about it. Maybe everyone else in the room does. I don't. But I know that in December of the date of the big flood, we were desperately worried about our neighbors. We were desperately worried about our own property. It was a tremendous crisis, and it's unclear to me what's holding us up from achieving what you, TC, have just said is the right thing to do in balancing these two ecological needs with the real problem that we have with the flow of water through this creek. So my question for you, because you've been the clearest person throughout this to give us advice, is how do we ensure that that can happen? What is preventing us from finding the right balance between those two things so that we can increase this water flow? Who do we talk to? What do we say? Who do we vote for? What do we give money to? What do you do to kind of make this all happen faster and increase the safety of our community?
That's a question with a long answer. Let me tell you what I think some of the components are. One is that we have not been able to decide on what the goals and criteria are for Reach 2. Initially, there was a hope that the Reach 2, that is from Pope Chaucer to Highway 101, could be increased to accommodate a 100-year flood, and so that would stand alone without upstream. It is clear that we cannot do that. There is still a tension about taking out the Pope Chaucer Bridge and allowing more water to flow downstream, although I have to say that the Pope Chaucer Bridge holds back a large lake of water that is forced through a small orifice in the culvert and in fact does go downstream in considerable volume. And what we need to realize in again, my view, is that we cannot do a 100-year solution in Reach 2. And what we have to do is decide what we can put in the way of flood walls that will increase the conveyance of Reach 2 to a point that it does save people from having as much flood risk as we have. Every winter, we go through the same thing. It's like a broken record. And we know that Pope Chaucer is a dam. It's got a little hole in the bottom, but it is the cause of a lot of the flooding that goes into our neighborhood. And we need to be able, in again, my view, to share that risk and minimize it as much as we can, consistent with what people can tolerate in the way of flood wall heights. There was an initial design that had 8-foot flood walls up near Pope Chaucer in order to contain what people thought was a 100-year flood. And that did not go over at all. And so there's a balance between the aesthetics and the functional capability and being able to actually contain the flood. And that's where a lot of the discussion is. There is not agreement about that. And I would like to see that's another part of the issue, is that there are 5 agencies involved in this, and plus state and federal agencies, and these need to agree. They're members of the board of the San Francisco Creek Joint Powers Authority, have representatives from all of those 5 agencies, and they have to get together and agree and vote and push forward a solution. And that has been a really slow, long time coming process. Another difficulty is because it takes so long, the membership of the city councils and the other agencies that are involved in this rotate. And so we get new people all the time. And the new people have to be brought up to speed. And that takes more time. And this is a complicated subject, believe me. And it takes, something like a year to go back over and understand what has been done and to not have to replow the same ground. And so we need to have a long, continuous engagement of people who have become knowledgeable, who are willing to put the time in to understand what's going on and to be able to vote knowledgeably or to communicate knowledgeably to the leadership of the various agencies what they want to have happen. I have tried, and I continue to try to help with that education and to work with people, but the community needs to get involved. That's where the power is. That's where the voice is. I can shout as much as I do, and people get tired of listening to that. They need to have a bit of variety. Yes. You have a microphone.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Xenia Hammer on Sharon Court. So I'm very grateful to the city of Palo Alto for doing improvements in the storm drains and putting in a pump station downstream of 101, and in conjunction with the Reach 1 project that has really made a difference on New Year's Eve of last year. And that was very visible and clear. I was also very happy to hear from Mike that the Hamilton and Center storm drain extension is a project that Palo Alto is actively working on. And that's great because that Hamilton, from Center to Hamilton storm drain is likely to make a significant difference for this very neighborhood and for many of our homes. So very, very grateful that you moved up those projects on the priority list. I would love to hear more specifics about the timing for that project and whether it's possible to get it done this summer ahead of next rainy season. Thank you.
We only have time for a couple more questions in order to move on to the other topic. This woman here and somebody in the back, maybe start there because the microphone is there. Yeah. Did you want to?
Okay, I have a question for Margaret Bruce, but I have a little statement before then. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so, we have moved up the project, as I said, and you mentioned, we don't have any members of our engineering team here, but, I would have to get back to you on whether they can actually move it up any further. Like Tom says, there's a lot of things, that we have to put into play first, and moving it up already, and then trying to move it up even some more is probably going to be even more challenging. So I'm grateful that we were able to move it up at all. And so, knowing how the government process works, unfortunately. So, but we'll pass that all on to the engineering team and try to get that answer for you.
I don't know what the moving it up that we've done, actually, what is the schedule now?
Yeah. Yeah, that, unfortunately, the information, I don't have that Brad shared with me. So we will get that answered for you and pass it on to you, what that date, how far it moved up already.
Hamilton.
Just for the people in this room, the plan up until last year was to replace the Pope Chaucer Bridge once the Reach 2 project was completed, and the project hasn't been for 10 or 15 years to get 100% 100-year flood protection. They were only going to be able to achieve 70%. So don't believe the story that it has to have 100%, 100-year flood protection in order to replace Pope Chaucer. That's not true legally. That's a new position that's been, well, it's not, I don't know what the position is, but it's not required. They did find that the creek does have less capacity, and there are challenges above on the Reach 2 for the above bank solution. But my question for Margaret is, when did we stop agreeing we were going to replace the Pope Chaucer Bridge once the Reach 2 was complete? To me, that sounds like a new position that has been a policy change since last year.
Okay. Based on the hydraulic report that we got from Valley Water and corroborated by our third-party consultant, we now know that the Pope Chaucer Bridge, if removed, would send so much water down the channel that it would spill out on the Palo Alto side, the Menlo Park side, and East Palo Alto. If we were to do that, we would be breaking the law. It is against the law for us to transfer risk. So a policy change only came about because we now have a better understanding of how the water dynamic in the creek works in high flow circumstances. What that means for the replacement of the Pope Chaucer Bridge, we don't yet know. Do we leave it in place and have other adjustments? Do we take it out and replace it with something different? We don't know yet. We will figure that out.
Maybe it's working. Yeah. Okay. I'm Amy Kacher. And my question is, I'm tired of paying to be in a, is that good? I'm tired of paying for living in a flood zone. I'm sorry. I'm tired. What am I doing? Oh, like this? Like that? Here to live in a flood zone when I feel like the reason I'm having to pay that is because of the problems with just like bureaucracy, not being able to figure it out. And I just feel like it's been 26 years since 1998 flood, and we just found out the other day, relatively, that there's more water than we thought. It just doesn't make sense. And I am wondering also whether any of these mitigations, like if we were to somehow someday get the Pope Chaucer Bridge changed, whether it's not for a 100-year flood plan or not, and all these pumps that we're putting in, would we ever have a hope of getting out of a designated flood zone for insurance? Because it seems like the transfer of risk is now on the homeowners, actually, because we're paying for that.
That, of course, is ultimately one of the goals, is to get this to the point that FEMA will reduce at least the size of the flood zone or the intensity of the flood zone and reduce the pain and the cost every year of having to renew flood insurance. That can only happen, though, after this chain of events takes place, which is one of the sources of real frustration, I know, for many, many people. I think we need to move on. There may be time for more conversation about this topic during the open session, but what I'd like to do now is to move on to the topic of crime and security in our neighborhood. And I'd like to introduce Police Chief Andrew Binder.
Hey, good evening. Can you guys hear me in the back okay? Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go through my notes, and then when it comes to the question and answer session, we'll pass the mic out there, and then I'll do my best to project. I got 2 teenagers at home and a 12-year-old, so I'm used to raising my voice. Hey, I know we got important topics to cover tonight, crime and some of the issues happening in your neighborhood. I always like to start these meetings off by telling you what a privilege it is to be your police chief. I mean, look at this room, packed standing room, engagement, here to engage. And that's one of the things I really enjoy about being the police chief here. And I want you to know that I deeply care about the safety of this community, and that is a very high priority for me. And it's important that members of this community, people who come to this community to use our facilities, to shop in our downtown, our business corridors, that are visiting Palo Alto, that they feel safe and that they have confidence in their police department. And I want to acknowledge that there's people in this room, there's people on the Zoom, and there's people in your neighborhoods who haven't felt safe over the last couple of months. And that's really important. And if you've been victimized by an auto theft, your home's been broken into, or another crime, let me just tell you first and foremost, I'm sorry that's happened to you. I can remember as a young boy coming home when I was in elementary school and our house had been ransacked. And I remember walking into my parents' room and all the drawers had been opened. And that feeling of being victimized, being vulnerable, being scared, feeling like a place of security for us had been intruded by a stranger. And I want to tell you, as your police chief, that's not lost on me. And so we take that very seriously. And the last thing I want to share is we want to connect with you. Did you see the 2 officers that were out front when you came in? Disclaimer, they weren't here because we were expecting trouble. They're here because I want you to see that we're humans, and that there's humans behind the badge, and that there's humans that are here to serve you. And that's who, and it's not everyone gets engagement with the police department. And so my hope was that you would show up and you'd get a smile from them and you'd say hi. And if you had a question to ask them, that you had that opportunity. We don't always like to meet people in their most critical, dire moments. So that was an opportunity for us to connect with you. And there's a lot of opinions about the police department here, regionally, nationally. I will tell you, we are more than our headlines. And so, that I want you to get to know us. That's really important to me. And so let me just briefly, I mentioned safety being a priority for me. What do you think is on the chief's mind as a priority? Let me just give you 2 real quick things, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of what we're here for. The first is recruiting, hiring, and retention. Why is that important? That's important because when you call 911 and you need a cop to show up to your house or your neighborhood, I need to be able to send someone to you. And the last couple years have been rocky for this profession, and we've seen people leave the profession. And I have vacancies, but we're always looking to fill those vacancies. And I want to give the two council members up here credit. I want to give the council member in the audience credit, that I can't tell you enough how grateful I am for the support of this city council and this community who is helping me reach that endeavor, fill our vacancies, so that when you need a cop, I can send someone to you. And it's a bigger picture than just the officer driving the black and white. It's the dispatcher who takes your call. It's a records clerk who's going to facilitate your report. It's our radio techs who work on our radio so the officers can get there and communicate. It's all that. We're like a machine with all these parts that make it go. So that's really important to me. The second thing is our responsiveness to crime and community issues. We are crime fighters. We have the badges, we have the guns, we have the training. It is our job to combat crime in this community, and that is important to us. That's what we're called to do. And when I talk about community issues, it might be traffic, which I'm going to mention. It might be other issues that are happening. Those are the priorities for me. I serve you. What I tell my officers when I get in front of them is, it's not what you want to do. We serve a community. We serve a council. You are public servants, and so we want to meet those expectations for you. So let me ask you a question. It's rhetorical. No one has to raise their hands. But let me ask you, are you connected with what the police department is doing? Are you aware of our activities? And if you can't answer yes to that, I'm here to tell you, I'm going to give you 4 different ways to connect with the police department. I firmly believe that knowledge is power. You're going to hear anecdotes from neighbors. You're going to read stuff on Nextdoor. You're going to read stuff in the paper. I'm telling you, there's opportunities to hear it from the horse's mouth, and that's the police department. We take a lot of pride in our proactive communications. So the first way is our press releases. When there's a major event, when there's a investigation, when there's important news that we want to give to the community, we proactively will give a news release. You can go onto our website. This is generally what our media will take and then write their story on. Would it surprise you to know that since mid-January to today, 5 of our last press releases involve incidents happening in your neighborhood with sufficient details? We want to keep you informed. If you're not reading those press releases, I would really encourage you to do that. The second is our social media. Okay, I got a homework assignment for you. We are in a school setting. If you haven't grabbed one of these before you go, please do. If you don't remember anything I say, grab one of these. This is going to back up everything I'm talking about. They're on the back table. On the back, all the social media. My kids know these way better than I do, but these are all the ways that we want to communicate with you at your fingertips, on your phone, when you're sitting in your living room, when you're talking with your neighbors out front. Go on these and you can find out what we're up to. The third is, a couple years ago, we created a calls for service interactive map. Now, I know no one in this room is curious when the cops show up to their neighbor's house, but let's just say you got another neighbor and they're curious when the cops show up to the neighbor's house. And you're thinking, what are the cops doing at Susie's house or Mike's house, right? Well, let me tell you, you can go online, websites here, and for the last 24 hours, you can find out what calls for service your police department has gone to. That's an important tool. You want to know what's going on in your neighborhood? You can play with it. You can look it up by category, whatever you want. Please check that out. And the last, and I'll admit, one I'm most proud of, Palo Alto Police is the only police agency in this county that has an unencrypted radio. And years ago, thank you. Years ago, agencies went to encrypted radio. We were encrypted for a while. When I became chief, we unencrypted. It was the first thing I did. And why did I do that? Because transparency is important. The ability for our community to hear what's going on is important. And let me tell you, we got nothing to hide. We don't always get it right. We make mistakes, we're human. But let me tell you, the police department has nothing to hide. And I want members of the community to listen to what we're doing. And when we had the storms last year with the flooding, people called me and they said, you know what? Thank you that at 2 a.m. I could listen to what was happening. and it made me feel safe and secured. And our members of the community want to be part of the solution. They don't want to spy on us. And so I'm really proud of that. You can go to broadcastify.com. You can download it for free. You can listen to us anytime you want. Please do so. All right. Really quickly, I'm gonna hit on traffic. I won't ask you to raise your hand if you've seen a speeder on Embarcadero or Alma. I'm aware. I want to acknowledge that. I drive in this community too. Freaks me out sometime. Traffic is generally the #1 complaint that comes into my inbox and when I come to town halls like this. So just know that. That's important to us. In last year, I brought back our traffic sergeant. He rides a motorcycle. So if you've seen a cop riding a motorcycle around town, that's him, okay? In this fiscal budget, again, I'm going to thank the council members in the audience. They supported me. I asked for 2 additional traffic officers in my budget, and they gave it to me. And so I'm happy to say that just this week, we are testing to fill those. And that is my hope that by beginning of summer that we're going to have 2 additional motorcycle officers, traffic officers out keeping our streets safe. Now, before you clap, you got to hear this. I'm going to these meetings, right? And people are like, traffic enforcement. And then they catch me at the next one. They're like, I got a ticket on Middlefield. And I'm like, well, you asked for it. So just know. And I want to acknowledge Councilmember Koo. When she was mayor, her and I put out a traffic message last year. And if you didn't read it, let me give you the gist. And this is really important. Traffic safety is everyone's responsibility. Everyone's responsibility in this room. All right, we're all Team Palo Alto. And we know that this is a community of bikers, this is a community of walkers, and this is a community that gets around. We have so many people come in. We're all part of the traffic, of being responsible for traffic. So I'm going to challenge you tonight, in addition to getting the flyer, follow the vehicle code. Slow down. Be aware and be alert of your surroundings, even if you're in the right. Be careful. We have bikers and pedestrians on our street. And here's the very last one, and I saved it for last on purpose. Stay off your phone when you're in the car, please. Please. All right. Let's talk about what we're here for. Crime. I just found out right before I got here, our 2023 crime stats are on our website. Again, that flyer will lead you where to go. If you're a data junkie or geek, you will have stats for days. If you've been on there for already, you know that Palo Alto is a very safe city. Overall, we have a very, very low violent crime rate, and the predominant crime trends that we see are property crimes. And again, that doesn't diminish the importance of how we treat them or investigate them. But I also want to set some context. The property crimes and the crime trends that we're seeing here, they're a regional issue. And our neighbors in Mountain View, our neighbors in Menlo, our neighbors in Los Altos, we're all dealing with the same crews, and even regionally. And I will tell you, I spent a half an hour with our burglary detective today in preparation for this. And he's not only dealing with law enforcement agencies throughout the Bay Area, he's working down south. He's working with federal agencies. And what we're seeing is the sophistication of our burglary crews and other crews, our organized retail theft crews who are hitting our shopping center. It's mind-boggling and it's scary. So it's a regional trend. If there's people in here that feel like, man, Palo Alto, one of these neighbors is getting picked on, if it makes you feel better, know that this is an issue that we're addressing in its totality in the region. Let me address auto burglary first. If you've ever witnessed or seen an auto burglary on a video, it happens in a matter of seconds. And if it's tempered glass, you're probably not going to hear it. And they can be in and out of your car in 5 seconds. And we're going to talk about some things you can do, because I'm going to leave you with some actionable tips. Let me just tell you, I pulled in here, I parked. Everything in my car, I put in my trunk. Nothing is visible in my car. When my family goes out and travels, nothing is visible, not even change in the center console. I just happened, because I was around, peeked in the car next to me, a computer bag sitting on the front seat in plain view. Our burglars, our auto burglars they're opportunists. And when they walk between, if they were to walk between our two cars, they're going to look in both. Which one do you think they're going to break into? So there are things that the police department can do that are in our control. And then there are things that you can also do. And we're going to talk about that, but I just wanted to give that real life example as I walked in here. Let me give you some stats. From the beginning of the year to mid-February, we saw a rise in auto burglaries in your neighborhoods, citywide, and regionally in the area. Over the last month, I had them re-pull the stats. So in the first month, there were 29 auto burglaries in just your neighborhoods alone. In the last month, there's been four. Citywide, we've seen a 42% decrease. Why is that? Why is that? There are a lot of reasons for it. We'll get into it a little bit. The police department has taken some proactive measures. I will tell you, crime is cyclical. You want to get 5 criminologists in here to talk about crime trends. They'll all have different takes on it. But I've got some thoughts that I'm going to share with you in just a minute. Let's talk about residential burglaries. From January 1st to mid-February, Crescent Park had 5 residential burglaries. I'm going to talk about one specifically in just a second. The rest of your neighborhoods had 0. Over the last month, Crescent Park had 2, and in the other neighborhoods, 1. Now, let me be very clear. The number that I want, the aspirational goal for me as your chief is 0. I don't want anybody's house broken into. But again, there's only so much we can control, and we're going to talk about our efforts. I did mention I wanted to talk about one very specifically. Back on January 19th in the evening, about 7:30, at the 700 block of Center Drive, there was a house sitter that was home. This was a press release, if you didn't read it. There was a house sitter that was home. 3 suspects broke the side fence, came through the back slider, busted it, and were confronted by this homeowner. I will tell you, in talking to the detective today, as soon as the house sitter saw them and their identity was known that they were in the house, they boogied. They left immediately. They were non-confrontational. Generally, like our auto burglar thieves, our home burglars, they want to come to your house when you're not there because they want to get in and they want to get out. They don't want to be detected. They don't want to be confronted. This is to date the only occupied residential burglary that we've had in the entire city. So, we get a lot of emails at the city and me as a police chief. If you send them to the city police box, we get them. And let me tell you, we've answered them. And there's people in this room who I've gotten emails from and phone calls. We will answer you. We are responsive to you. But it's interesting how much the story grows and the information is false. So going back to, do you know what your police department is up to? Are you following the information that we're putting out? I'd really encourage you to do that. So I would argue too that one occupied residential burglary is way too many. It's one more than I want to have. Through some very tenacious detective work, through the help of members of your community, your neighbors, I'm very confident that we have leads on who did that. I won't go into details, and I'm very confident that if I was to come to you in the near future, that I will announce arrests being made. Okay, so just know that, and I don't want to get into that anything more. But your officers are tenacious and they're hard at work and they're fighting crime on your behalf. Let me talk really quickly about a robbery that occurred on DeSoto. Sir, if I heard that right, that's your street. Let me just tell you how scary that can be. That was also a press release, so if you don't know the details of that, I encourage you to go that. I'll give it to you very quickly. A woman in her 60s had parked in her driveway. She was still in the car. The windows were up. There's a knock on the door, the window, and the subject presented as if he had a weapon under his jacket and demanded her purse, and her phone. smartly and appropriately, she gave that up. And I say that because my advice to you is do not confront people like this. Remember, property is replaceable, people are not. Property is replaceable, people are not. And I'm never going to sit in front of a community meeting like this or an audience and tell them to take these guys on. And so what happened was this guy dropped the phone about a block away, and our detectives went out there, our officers went out there, they canvassed. Anybody see the female officer that was here? She's a sergeant. She found the phone. She noticed there was a fingerprint on it. And within the night it happened to just under 3 weeks, the guy who did it was arrested and in custody. And so I'm really proud of that. That is the only robbery that I'm aware of in your neighborhood. So, and you know, I gotta, let me just say one more thing. I know I'm running out of time, but I'll finish up here in just a minute. I was at Channing House last year, and I was asked to give a presentation. And a question from the audience came is it safe to walk in Palo Alto at night? Is it safe? Can I go walk alone? And here's my response. Yes. But just because the police chief says it's safe doesn't absolve you of taking proactive measures to ensure your safety. And so if I'll use my mother as an example who's in her 70s. If she wanted to walk in Palo Alto and said, son, do you think I should do that? I'd say, absolutely, beautiful city. You're gonna love the neighborhoods. Go check out one of them that are here. But I'd tell her, does dad know where you're going? Are you taking the dog? Hey, Susie down the street's been dying to get out of our house. How about you two walk together? And I'd tell her, take your cell phone, but I don't want you on it. I want it in your pocket, or I want it in your hand, because if you need to call someone, I want it ready to go. I often will go downtown and walk around for a number of reasons. I want people just to see a police presence down there, really, and don't tell my boss. I'm glad he's not here. I like to just get out of the office because the keyboard is killing me, and I love the sunshine. I was amazed at the amount of pedestrians in or about to enter the roadway who are on their phone like this. Okay, so you can walk in Palo Alto, it's safe to do that. I can't guarantee nothing will happen to you, but I can tell you can take preventive measures to ensure, put yourself in best position to be safe. All right, what has the PD been up to? What did we do? When your emails, when your phone calls came in, we increased our patrol, our visible presence out there, both uniformed and plain clothes. There are people in this audience who reached out to the police department. We sent an officer to go meet with their neighborhoods and talk with them, give them crime prevention tips. You can go on our website. There are crime prevention tips for days about how to fortify your house, how to keep your house safe, what to do with an auto burglar. I encourage you to all do that. We are working comprehensively with the regional network of law enforcement that I spoke of. And I would be remiss to not acknowledge, again, council's support in our automated license plate reader technology. We have 20 of those cameras around town. Those are paying extraordinary dividends in our ability to identify people who are coming to the city and committing crime and following up or getting them in the act. Let me just close on this. We last month came out with a program where you can sign up your home security camera with us. It's called the Neighborhood Security Camera Program. And why is that important? The officers, when you have a crime at your house, are going to go out and they're going to canvass and they're going to look for clues. It's like putting a piece of a puzzle together. You've all seen the detective shows on TV. This is an opportunity for you to register voluntarily. You don't have to do it, but if you want to voluntarily let the police department know that you have a surveillance camera system, you can do that. We cannot tap into your system. We don't want to tap into your system. It just lets us know. So that officer who may be looking and canvassing the area for video from your neighbors will know exactly where to start their search. And I will tell you, when I talk about us being on the closing end of that case where the occupied residential burglary was, neighbors' surveillance system played a role in that. And we put the pieces together. License plate readers played a role in that. And we take nuggets from all over like breadcrumbs and we put it together to make a case, and it's very compelling. And with that, I'm ready to take your questions.
Thank you, Chief. We have about 10 minutes for questions.
Hello. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Police Chief, for being here and talking to us about it. I live on DeSoto Drive, and I've lived there for over 25 years. And it's always been a very quiet street. We used to not seeing police at all. So the recent 2 incidents within 1 month that's happening on our drive is certainly very, very concerning. And at least personally, I feel very violated and insecure, just like you started out with. So, but before I putting my suggestions, I wanted to thank the whole police department. What you guys did for the incident for our neighbor and caught that guy from East Palo Alto is very, very commending. We want to thank you for that, for the great efforts. And the secondly, I think we all, as a neighborhood, we all kind of are stepping up. And I still remember vividly that night when I was just stepping out to actually go to the airport when I saw the police car in front of us and I asked what happened. And he asked to see our security camera, and our camera wasn't very clear. So it wasn't very helpful, but we are all stepping up, putting more cameras, 4K cameras on our high ground to help the police out. So we're also brainstorming the things that we can ask the police department for help. So here are a couple of things we were thinking. First of all, starting several years ago, there are more cars parked on Channing and DeSoto Drive. We had DeSoto ends at Channing. And those cars obviously do not belong in the street right here from non-neighbors. And we also see more increasing of that because we heard, I think we heard that there's parking permits in Crescent Park up to the Newell Bridge. And so there are more cars that are parked inflow into our street. So our ask is those cars really complicates the situation, right? You don't know whose cars they belong to. That night, when we really want to catch the criminals, we have no clue who used to be in this neighborhood, right? And so we were asking if it's possible to extend the parking permit requirements into Channing, into that section, so that it helps alleviate the situation. And the second maybe minor thing is they are parked so close to our drive that when we get out, we really literally have to come out all the way to Channing before we can see if we can move, right? That's the first request. And the second thing, obviously, we want to welcome more police patrol in the street, in the neighborhood. I think that obviously creates some effects on potential criminals, right? And also we have seen more doorstep vending in our street too. And now with all these crime happening in the neighborhood, we're not sure these could really complicate things that we don't know they are really.
I think we need to move on to another.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to ask you to stand on one.
Let me just address actually the parking issue, Philip, Cami. I'm going to suggest, actually, Philip, just so we can stay on the crime, how about you connect with Philip after the meeting? Would that be good? Okay. Questions about, I'll let you guys.
Can I go? Yeah, so hi. I think you'll appreciate what I'm about to say. First of all, thank you so much for being here. I'm Christine Meyer. I've lived in Palo Alto for about 18 years. I think over the past however many decades, sometimes there's conflicting information, especially how we should, if we see something, how we should respond to that. Do we call 911? Do we call a non-emergency number? And to your point, where you were just about to go as it relates to solicitors, my understanding is from talking with an officer in your department that there's a new Senate Bill 946 that now solicitors do not need to have a permit to come up to our doorsteps, which before they did. I would love to just get a little feedback with regards to that. And also just as it relates to just people who might be casing our homes, what should we be looking for as we're looking out for our neighbors and for our own properties? And who do we call? I think that's the main
Yeah,
piece.
that is a great question. It's on my notes. I didn't get to it. So you're like an audience plant. So thank you for doing that. Hey, look, we're going to ask you on this flyer. You're going to see it on our website. We want you to be our eyes and ears, and we want you to report suspicious activity. We want that suspicious, this is a really important key point. We want that suspicious activity to be related to crime. So don't call us if someone's in your neighborhood that you don't recognize and all they're doing is walking down the sidewalk. That's not suspicious activity related to crime. Here's what could be suspicious activity related to crime. Someone maybe you don't recognize that is trying door handles. Someone that is walking through your neighborhood and peeking over your neighbor's fence. Someone you've seen walk up to your neighbor's porch and take a package and walk off. Someone that's walked into your open neighbor's garages, rode off with their bike. Those types of activities, that's when you want us to call. You are our eyes and ears. The reality is, and you know this, we can't be everywhere at once. When in doubt, call 911. People call 911 because they want to know how long they should bake a Thanksgiving turkey for. I'm telling you, it's true. So we want you to call. If you're astute enough and you have the wherewithal and you want to call the non-emergency, you can do that. Call 911. That's what they're there for. Tell them what you got. Don't rationalize away what you think you're seeing. Explain to them what you got. The dispatcher, the supervisor on duty, they'll make the call. But if you're going to make that call, we want that suspicious activity. We want it related to crime. Okay? Thank you for that question. Sir.
You briefly mentioned it during your talk. Could you go back to sort of the cyclical nature of sort of crime coming and going? I was one of the people who contacted you about numerous cars broken in on our street. Yeah. It's mostly late January, February sort of timeframe.
Yeah, thank you for that email, by the way. I would love to stand up here and like pull open my shirt and tell you we went from 29 to 5 because of what, we did. And I got to say that we definitely, crime data will never tell you what a high visibility patrol presence does to deter crime. I believe that our proactive efforts that we did definitely played a role in that. I believe our outreach and engagement with our neighbors and our communities about proactive steps that you can take on the couple ones that we did over the last 8 weeks helped. But the reality too is crime is cyclical, and sometimes it spikes and we can't tell you why, and sometimes it dips and we can't tell you why. What I can tell you is that we remain vigilant, and these issues are always on our mind. And like I said, the ideal number for any police chief is 0. I want this to be a crime-free community. That's just not the reality. So we'll continue to work on what we can do to make that difference. Your partnership, going to that website, our website, crime prevention tips. That's your skin in the game, so to speak, to help us out.
Hi, I just wanted to know if during the holidays, maybe there could be additional patrolling. There's the cyclical part is usually, this happened during Christmas and New Year's, and then there's also the summer months.
Yeah, we do. The question, if you didn't hear it, was during the holidays, how about some additional patrols? We do that. We do it at our shopping centers. We do it at our business corridors, Cal Ave, University Ave. We do it in our neighborhoods. We put a lot of officers out there recognizing that there's a lot of potential for crime during the holidays. And I think I'm going to get cut off, so here's what I'm going to do. When this is over, I'll be hanging around. If you have a question, if you want to share something with me, I'll be either up front or come track me down, and I'm happy to answer your questions. Alrighty?
Thank you, Chief Bender. Let's move on to the last topic, which is traffic transportation updates. Philip Kami is going to make that presentation.
Thank you very much. Tom, can you all hear me? Okay, great. I read the press releases that his department puts out, but I feel like now I want it narrated by Chief Bender because it's much more engaging. No offense to the press release. I'm Philip Cami, the Chief Transportation Official. I'm from the Office of Transportation. My backstory does not involve ransacking of my home. I started off actually, as you might expect, as a kid that was really interested in transportation, volunteering and going to do surveys on buses and at train station openings and things like that. I know we're kind of short on time or running out of time, so I'm going to go through some of the key projects and initiatives that the Office of Transportation is currently working on. Luckily tonight, I'm joined up here by two members of our rail committee, two of the three members, I should say, that are helping us to make decisions on our grade separation project. And if you haven't been tuned into that project for a little bit, I know it's been going on for a while. We've really had some really incredible action lately on that project. We've recently been awarded a $6 million grant from the Federal Rail Administration and a $23.79 million grant from the California State Transit Agency. And those grants are for the next phase. So really, this is a drive to move the project into the next phase. And the rail committee's been starting to deliberate and try to make some decisions. Currently, we have a council-selected preferred alternative for Churchill. And we've got, at Charleston and Meadow, we've got 3 alternatives that are being reviewed by the council, a hybrid, an underpass, and a trench alternative. And also the rail committee is looking at the viaduct. We have a rail committee meeting upcoming on April 16th. And at that meeting, the rail committee is going to be discussing not only some technical comments that we received from Caltrain on the alternatives, I should say continuing that discussion because it did start, but also potentially making recommendations to council to narrow the alternatives under consideration, and also reviewing 2 different bike and ped tunnel options for the Churchill alternative, which is a underpass option that's the preferred alternative. We're intending to go to City Council on the 29th of April to do a study session, and then we're planning to do community conversation in May on this. Closely related, and I'm sorry, also we'll be going to Council in early June potentially to with recommendations from the Rail Committee. We also have a closely related project, which is our Quiet Zones project. And right now we've got Palo Alto Avenue, where we've completed the study and the project plans are in development, and we hope to have bidding occur in late 2024. And we're just getting started on Charleston, Meadow, and Churchill. And we're doing the initial analysis for a quiet zone. So what's a quiet zone? A quiet zone is a section of rail where the horns are not sounded when the trains approach. Normally, under normal circumstances, like they will still honk if there's something on the tracks, but they're not going to blow the horns just passing through. So it's a community health benefit, or the noise nuisance, all that would potentially be eliminated through the Quiet Zones project. All right, changing subjects. Can I get a show of hands in here if you've heard of or taken a ride on the Palo Alto Link service? Wow, that's a lot. So we just finished our first year of service this month, March. We started the pilot service on March 7th of 2023. We have had over 50,000 trips in the first year. The council is going to be reviewing a report on the Palo Alto Link's performance on April 1, next Monday, and we'll be giving a 12-month service update. So it's a pilot service, and we currently have funding to go through October, and so potentially we'll be discussing options to extend it. If you haven't taken it, there's flyers in the back, or you can download the app on the App Store. On your app store, if you've got Android or iPhone, it's the Palo Alto Link app. And I encourage you all to try it. Next, we have the bicycle and pedestrian transportation plan update. And That's our project where we're kind of holistically looking at our bicycle and transportation network and how we can improve and remove gaps, eliminate gaps, complete the network, or improve the network. Currently, we've really been in the community engagement phase, and right now, we've been actually last night, we were at the Planning and Transportation Commission, we were at the Parks and Recreation Commission the night before, and we're reviewing the vision statement and the existing conditions, and we're looking at proposed metrics for success. And we've got a lot of events coming up for the Bicycle and Pedestrian Transportation Plan update. We've got a table that's going to be at the Earth Day event. We have a bike ride and a downtown walk with Avenidas and a network development workshop. And in summer of 2024, phase 3 will be to prioritize projects, develop programs, and enhance networks. And we expect the entire plan to be done in 2025. And closely related to that project, we have our Safe Streets for All project, which is a project that we received a grant for, also a $160,000 grant for. And that one is going to help us to develop a toolkit and policies with the goal of eliminating traffic fatalities and serious injuries. It's the project developing this action plan involves community engagement, collision analysis, and safety measure development. And we're going to be giving a council informational report in the next couple months. And there will also be opportunities to engage in the community for this event. And when we complete this Safe Streets for All action plan, that's going to allow us to compete for more grants that could actually construct things that we get from this toolkit. And then finally, with a local project, we've got the Crescent Park traffic calming project, which was resident initiated. And just to give the brief update, we're developing more in-depth conceptual plans that we want to get feedback from the residents that have been so involved in this. And thank you very much for your involvement. We're expecting outreach in fall, and then following that, we'll proceed to final design. And with that, I just wanted to say something very similar to what Chief said, but when you're out there riding, biking, walking, driving, just be present. Pay attention to the traffic signals and the traffic signs. And I've already seen hands, so thank you very much, everybody, for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Philip.
I'll get you second.
So let's move into the next question and answer session. Philip is certainly a key candidate for questions. And then we want to open up the latter part of the half hour or 20 minutes to general questions that people might have that were not addressed earlier. So, yes, ma'am. Microphone.
I have a question.
Somebody has the microphone in the back, so let them go first and we'll get to you.
Thanks. I'm Carol Mower. I live on Heather Lane. I actually have concerns about traffic. I have concerns about crime. I have concerns about flooding. I was here in '98, lost a lot of property, etc. Did not lose lives. We are losing lives on our streets. We are not going to stop losing lives until we focus on driving behavior. And I really applaud the admonitions of those in front of us to encourage everybody to consider they're part of the solution. But we need much better coordinated, ongoing messaging, behavioral aspects like narrowing lanes and putting in things that are going to slow people down behaviorally. But we need more than that, and we need to coordinate across jurisdictions. This is hard stuff. But in Palo Alto, I'm confident we have professionals and people who really know how to launch effective public relations campaigns. We need to get people to slow down. We need to get people driving vehicles to realize they are behind the wheels of lethal weapons. And if they don't drive with that understanding, if they're so so careless of the laws of people, of the lives of people in our communities. They shouldn't be on the road, which brings me to a couple of questions I have. One is, could anyone remind me what is preventing us from giving tickets through technological means to people who run red lights, which I see daily, literally, at Embarcadero and Lewis, to people who are speeding way over the speed limit, to people who are driving unsafely, to people who are not stopping at stop signs. I ride my bike, I walk, I drive in this community. I see it everywhere. I'm sure most of you in the room do as well. We need a campaign. We need to put the responsibility on people who drive vehicles in particular. We can't put this all on pedestrians and cyclists to be safe. So that was one question. The other is, I'm aware of injury accidents that don't get reported, and I don't understand why they're not a crime when the driver stopped, admitted that he had been looking at his phone and hadn't yielded right of way, injured someone, totaled her bike, and instead, with a police officer there, there's nothing he's charged with? How does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say thank you for your commitment to traffic. Sorry, but thank you for your commitment to traffic safety and transportation safety. And I do want to say, and I know some of these responses probably could come from Chief Binder regarding the enforcement, the traffic light, but I'll just speak to what I can. What we're doing with the Safe Streets for All action plan is meant to eliminate serious injuries and fatalities in traffic situations. So it's looking at policies that can help us to get there. It's looking at treatments that we can do the roads that you mentioned, some of them. So that's really what we're looking at. So if you see something, one of our events, you want to provide feedback to us, look on our website. It's the transportation website on the City of Palo Alto. Look under our Safe Streets for All action plan and also our bicycle and pedestrian transportation plan. Thank you.
Chief Binder, did you want to comment on the technological?
Yeah, I do. And I just, I want to reaffirm that vehicles can cause significant damage and injury, and they kill people out there. And that's why when I talk about, not to take the air out of the room, but when I urge you to drive safely and responsibly, it's because, accidents can take lives. And we don't want that. We don't want that. If there's a traffic issue in your area that you want the police department to pay attention to, I have the personnel to do it. Supplementing traffic enforcement until I can get those officers on the motor to go out. We take your input, we take your suggestions, we take your complaints, and we strategically target areas throughout the city that we both recognize from the police department and that we're getting from the community, and we'll go out there. Our part is to write tickets and enforce vehicle code. We will do that. And so I would encourage you, if you're seeing a hot spot or an area that needs police attention, email us. We will be responsive to that.
Yes.
The microphone's right here. He's in charge. Whatever. I defer to the authorities, which is not me.
I'm sorry. My question is a quick one. Do you have any statistics on whether or not having the green painting and all that business for improving bicycle safety has really done anything? Because my opinion is that I see people disregarding that, both bicyclists and motorists, all the time. And I think that this is just a waste of paint at the present time.
Yes, so just to note, and I don't have any of the data on hand, or I can't cite specific data, but I will say that any visual difference in the roadway calls attention to differences. So the paint, it does actually provide the visual difference of the two things, of the marcation of the lane and where potentially bicyclists can go. That does not mean that everybody's following the rules, just like we've talked about many times tonight. People are looking at their cell phones or other things, which we really don't want to see. But the reality is, yes, that is one treatment that can produce some separation, but that's not the only one. And so that's why we're trying to look at our bicycle and pedestrian transportation plan and looking at other treatments that maybe potentially be more effective.
I'm going to take the mic here. Is it on? My name is Lisa Van Duzen. I live in Community Center. Thanks for hosting this tonight. And I would like my comments or question echoes Carol, and I don't remember your name, but you're Carol and Carol, Lisa. So I'm wondering, this is a lot from the vantage point of cars. I drive a car more than I ride a bike. I walk a lot. I'm married to an pretty much always cyclist. And I'm not comfortable riding my bike everywhere because I find it confusing and pretty half-baked. I know we've won awards and we're lauded for our cyclists, but I think what you, Carol, said was that it's not consistent, it's not separated, it's not a Vision Zero type plan in our city. And if anyone knows about what that is, I would hope we would become one, which is where it's, talking about zero crime, let's have zero deaths or injuries from of cyclists and pedestrians or any kind. But we really can do better. And I don't pretend to know how that is, but many communities have done that and have made it a really wonderful place to cycle and to be, for everyone to be compatible with one another. I know there are compromises of parking, so I would love to hear your thoughts. I love your passion for what you do. How could we become a Vision Zero community?
Thank you. That's a great question. And I didn't use the word earlier, Vision Zero, but that's actually one of the policies that we're developing through the Safe Streets for All action plan. So that's one of the policies when I talked about policies and toolkit for improving safety. Vision Zero is actually one of the key policies that we'd be talking about. So that is one that we're developing through this. It's actually, we've got it in two different places because we knew that we wanted to do this. So we actually have it in two different places. We have it scoped in our bicycle and pedestrian transportation plan and in the grant that we got subsequently for the Safe Streets for All. And because the Safe Streets for All is moving it's a more condensed scope. It's not looking at the entire bicycle network. We're anticipating that we'll be able to move forward policies in that before we finish the bicycle and pedestrian transportation plan.
Can't hear you.
Yeah, I actually did hear, so I can repeat it. So she was asking, does that involve actual separation, like bollards or some other protection? And to answer that question, that can come from the policy, but it can also come from the plan. So the bicycle and pedestrian transportation plan will be looking at potential projects for connecting networks, for improving existing facilities and fixing any gaps. But yes, the actual Safe Streets for All action plan, which is, I should say, is for all users. It's not just for bicycles. It's not just for pedestrians. It's for vehicles as well. Could include a toolkit that says, this is what you can do on this street in order to improve safety for this user.
Hi, my name is Greg Welch. I live on Center Drive. I am the resident who started the process that resulted in the temporary roundabout. If I look at this situation with a glass half full, there's been a great dialogue with the city. We now have the results of a beta test. But the half empty is, I started that process 7 years ago. So just put that in mind when you hear about this next plan. The other thing is, what the residents asked for was much more comprehensive than remedies to two manifestly poorly designed intersections. We asked for all of what you just talked about. We didn't get it. 7 years later, we still have a beta. My kids have asked me, and they're grown and gone. I started this when they were in middle school. Dad, are we ever going to see that? I said, no, probably not. And part of it's the process. I don't see that the staff of the city engages with a sense of urgency. There doesn't look like there's lives at stake. There's none of that. The processes, we'll get together periodically in a large group like this. And then years go by and there's 17 different reviews. And all it takes is one person to show up and just raise a question. And then we have to go back and study it again. It doesn't matter that we had 150 people get together, put together a document, and advocate. If that 150 people don't stay engaged for 7 years, nothing happens. So, I mean, part of this is great. You come out here, you talk to us. How about do something? How about execute with a sense of urgency? Because you talked about loyalty to the future. I know, I remember, yeah, sense of urgency, results orientation. Yeah, well, the past is already, the future's already behind us, right? The temporary is better than the free-for-all that was there before, right? Everyone is in favor. Do we have it on the calendar? We don't need more plans. We had the plans when we met and we reviewed them as a community 5 years ago.
I think we understand.
Yeah, but I'm not totally sure there was a question there, but I do want to say thank you. So I started in this role 4 years ago. So I do want to say that I feel like we've moved a lot forward for the Crescent Park traffic calming project in the past 4 years. Considering the pandemic, especially, it's been a little bit challenging, but I hear you, and I'm committed to moving things forward.
I think we have time for one more question. That's good.
Why do we not require bicycle lights? Lights on bicycles at night? Because, for a driver, I bike, but for a driver, you can't see the person at night. It's very, very dangerous for bicyclists.
Why don't we require lights? The answer is we do. The vehicle code does. We do, but we don't catch everyone. But we do. I will tell you. I don't know. I'll use my dad voice. We do, but let me just share in your frustration for bicyclists who's out there with no lights and you're trying to drive reasonably. Because here's the deal. You could be a driver of a vehicle and be totally in the right, and you could hit somebody.
Right.
And that light's not replaceable. And so when I ask you to drive safely, again, I'm gonna just keep beating this drum. That's why I ask it. We gotta have our. You know what I do when I get in the car? First thing I do is I take a deep cleansing breath. I say, where am I going? What am I headed to? What's my objective? To Philip's question, am I present? Am I in the moment? Am I locked into what I'm doing? Especially in this community. And look, we can harp on the cars all night tonight, but I drive in here and I see plenty of bicyclists running stop signs and doing things that they shouldn't be doing on the road. And it's an issue. We're aware of it. We do enforcement. We do education with our younger grades, bike rodeos. We're out at the school in conjunction with the school. But we can't do it alone. So my challenge to you is if you have young ones that are at home riding or driving, share these messages. Share these messages. It's not going to solve the entirety of the problem, but it's a start.
and it's an actionable item that you can do.
The traffic controller should stop the bicycle. It doesn't have a light, runs red lights. Same rule applies to them.
Yeah, it depends. It really depends. You don't know if the officer's going to a call for service, has something else they're working. We do enforcement. We don't stop everyone on a bike without a light, though. I will acknowledge that.
Okay, we're close to wrap up, and I'd like to invite Pat Burt, our second council co-host, to give our parting remarks.
That was it. But we'll hang out, okay? So first, this is one of my 2 bike lights on the front and one on the back, one flashing to be seen, one solid to see. So I'm with you on defensive riding, and I have 2 of them on during the day when I ride to boot. So we're late. I'm seeing people leave, so I'm going to keep my comments on the next 20 minutes. No. So I just want to say, too, that I'm not going to try to match my colleague Julie's really wonderful comments at the beginning. I realize we've become kind of the odd couple of the council, and it's really a joy serving with somebody with a combination of her passion and her brains. So we have a lot of both fun and constructive work together that we team up on. Okay, I just wanted to add just a few quick follow-ups to some of the things that you heard tonight from other folks. On the transportation side, Philip mentioned that we have the Palo Alto Link coming back, but that was able to be done from a big grant. I think it's what, 2 million grant. And what do we subsidize by like $15 a ride? Is that what it is, I heard? Per ride on average. So it looks great. $30 it costs a ride. With a fare is $3.50. And so whether it's wonderful, I don't know if it's sustainable. So just want to share that so that we've got that grounded in the finances and that reality. Just from the standpoint of some people who say, why don't we just do this much more on traffic calming and those things for bikes, which I bike everywhere. I'm a big advocate, but when we a number of years ago, and we had a big meeting in this room 10 years or more ago on traffic calming on Channing, we had a divided community over that. And it was a tough battle to get, and we didn't get through all the calming that the staff had in their plan because we had a lot of disagreement. We don't all agree as a community, and that's part of our reality. I do want to mention one other good thing is I serve on the Caltrain board, and September 26th, I think, is the day we go fully electrified. And it's real, and it's not getting pushed out more. When I came on the board, and the woman who had recently become the CEO, I said, okay, so how much more are we going to push out that completion date? She said, we're not. And if you know her, she said, this is her style. And I said, well, I'm glad to hear you're committed to it, but I hope you're not overpromising. We're not. And I said, okay, but give yourself a little wiggle room. No, we're going to be on schedule. And now we're getting this close, and now it's gone from the month to the day that it's going to open. New Wi-Fi, new cars, a new service plan. And so that means that even Cal Ave station will have at peak hours 3 trains an hour, and all the stations will have from like 5:30 in the morning to 12:30 at night 2 an hour, and increase weekends. So everybody, you got a new toy to use. And then just a couple things on following up on Chief Binder's comments. And he did mention that his staff has had to deal with recovering from really severe cuts that the city did to public safety, fire and police in 2020. And it's come back in a couple of stages, and we're not yet all the way back to pre-COVID, but we're most of the way there. And part of those restorations are because you voters supported Measure K this last election cycle. And that 1/3 of those dollars was to restoration of services of the public safety and the library hours, 1/3 toward transportation, and 1/3 toward affordable housing. And I just want to thank the community for supporting that. We all go, geez, if we just got rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, we could afford everything that we really need. And yeah, there are efficiencies that we can have in government. But in reality, if we want to do more, it takes more. And this really targeted funds. And I just want to say thanks for supporting it. And I also want to add that as Chief Binder has been doing all sorts of things with his really strong staff to improve policing and restore the resources, because we say, well, why don't you have more officers here, here, and here? They aren't there. We have limited number of officers. But as we were restoring that staff, we also did really some reforms in policing in a very positive way, based on what under President Obama, it was called the 8 Can't Wait, and it was a set of 8 different measures that were for greater police transparency and accountability. And the chief got a buy-in from his staff. A lot of places in the country, this created big division, and it wasn't easy, but our police department has bought into those things, as well as the council has restored and increased the scope of the independent police auditor, and the chief has embraced that greater accountability. And he's brought his staff on board with something nobody wants to be scrutinized a whole bunch more. And I think it's really commendable, and I just want to call that out. Lastly, I just want to mention on the person who was raising the issue about Stanford lands and flood protection. So as part of this whole upstream in Searsville, it is part of the negotiation is flood basins with Stanford. They haven't been easy to negotiate with on this, but ultimately that's part of the program. And one other thing, as much as all of us really are so anxious to complete the next stages on the flood control, one thing we haven't explained well enough is that when we did what's called Reach 1, which was the downstream of 101, both sides, the frontage roads and the culverts under 101, those of us who were here in 98, we had a lake. We didn't have a lake this time because all that water now moves out downstream. And we had some local flooding that was a lot worse than any of us want, but we haven't really explained how much benefit we got from that Reach 1. And I just wanted people to know that while we continue to press to complete Reach 2. So that's my comments. We'll hang out. Thanks everybody for attending. Everybody gets a free lollipop, because this is the biggest turnout of any of the town halls we've had. And thanks for coming.